Welcome to Key to My Research, the science podcast by the Excellence Strategy at the University of Tübingen. In this podcast, we explain in a simple way how outstanding scientists are researching complex topics that affect our everyday lives. My name is Jennifer and I'm your host. In today's episode, we get to know Professor Christoph Bareither.
What we are trying to do is to contribute to a future in which we make better decisions about how to live together with artificial intelligence.
He's a professor for cultural anthropology and focuses on digital anthropology at the University of Tübingen. He is also the director of the Ludwig-Uhland-Institute for Empirical Cultural Studies. His research and teaching focuses on the ethnographic study of everyday digital cultures. His work aims to contribute to urgent sociopolitical debates by highlighting how digital technologies transform everyday practices and experiences.
My research, in a nutshell, is trying to find out how people use digital technologies to shape and live their everyday lives, but also how these technologies come in with their own affordances and their own agency to shape these everyday lives in return. And we are trying to look at both things at once to create basic knowledge which we can use to better understand our digital societies.
Let's look at specific topics. Professor Bareither and his team are working on the transformation of everyday culture through artificial intelligence, cultures of memory, cultural heritage and museums, as well as social media and digital image cultures. One of the projects Professor Bareither is focusing on is the use of generative AI at the university.
What do students and researchers actually do with AI right now? How do they use it? And how does it change the way they create and work with knowledge? And this is what we call hybrid epistemic practices. So epistemic practices, basically knowledge practices that are hybrid in the sense that humans and AI systems come together to create and shape knowledge or learn about it and so on. But the interesting thing was that there is really not a lot of research, especially qualitative and ethnographic research, on what actually happens on the ground.
That's why Professor Bareither and his team are now conducting ethnographic research to find out how people use generative AI. To get an overview, they started with a survey of around 500 people at the University of Tübingen.
So the big fear at the university was, oh God, now all the students will write all their assignments with generative AI, researchers will just create articles with generative AI and so on. And our survey finding was that's actually the least frequent thing.
Here are some examples of what most participants to the small survey said they were using generative AI for: as an alternative to Google, as a help for brainstorming, as a source of inspiration, to discover new ideas, or to help overcome writer's block.
It's also interesting, of course, there were critical reflections of how AI shapes our everyday life at the university. It's this problem of a potentially uncritical adaptation of AI-generated output. And this question of temptation, right? It's so easy to use. And it's actually not good. And most students see the results are not so great if you use it to generate text. But it has this temptation, especially when the pressure is on and you have to deliver. And so that people are tempted to use it anyway. And this temptation is now there. It's in the room, right? And so people struggle with that. And we just started, as I said, but we want to explore these and we will also feed them back into the university. I am also part of a working group that is responsible for developing basically the politics of the university and ideas and guidelines for teaching and research and so on. And we are feeding these insights also back into this working group and not only, but also, of course, into the research area on AI and science.
Professor Bareither and his team are now conducting in-depth interviews with a range of people. The goal is to really dig into this issue and explore how generative AI is changing the way people study and work at the University of Tübingen. Another important area of research in Professor Bareither's field is called curating digital images. Here, he and his team are trying to understand how the impact of social media affects how teenagers and adolescents perceive images of the human body. According to Professor Bareither's research, about 60% of teenagers and adolescents in Germany use Instagram or TikTok several times a week.
What they see is structured by recommender algorithms. And recommender algorithms today are mostly based on AI systems. And these are black boxes, so we don't exactly know how they work. The companies try to be more transparent about it, but you only get like bits and pieces of information about how they work. And we know they have quite a big impact. So what we look at in this project specifically is normative beauty standards. So how bodies are stereotypically represented in a lot of social media posts. And then the question what role algorithms and recommender algorithms play in reproducing these bodily stereotypes, these typical norms of beauty.
To achieve this, Professor Bareither and his team are combining modern and traditional methods.
We have basically young people who use social media so and so many hours a week, and then they create field notes and diaries that we then use for our analysis, combined with interviews with them, to better understand how it is for them to live everyday lives with these platforms and with their algorithms that present a certain kind of body image to them on a daily basis.
Understanding what happens to us when we use social media is the goal of this type of research.
So what we are trying to study is how people perceive bodily beauty through these social media feeds and how this shapes how they experience bodies of other people on Instagram and offline, and also their own bodies. How does that shape the way they perceive bodily beauty and bodily beauty standards?
While there is a big question mark over how exactly the algorithms of major social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram work, Professor Bareither does know the following.
What we know is that both platforms collect what they call signals from users. These could be, something you like or an account you follow and so on. But it could also, especially on TikTok, simply how long you look at a particular video. Right? And it already records the length, and then it uses it basically to create a profile of what you like, right? And what it does then is, at least TikTok, that is how its TikTok CEO once explained it, is to use AI-based pattern recognition process, which basically means, the way he explains it is, okay, we know that person A likes 1, 2, 3, and we know a person B that likes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we figure 4 is also likable for person A. So what this AI-based system does, it actually creates a network of taste, a network of aesthetic preferences, right? And uses this network. So it basically incorporates the tastes of all people using the platform and builds aesthetic relationships and taste relationships between them to figure out what someone likes, and then uses this to provide someone else what this person potentially likes.
So people are getting content that they didn't even know they liked, and it seems to work really well. That is one of the reasons why TikTok is so popular right now. With all his research, Professor Bareither has a noble goal.
What we are trying to do, my teams and I, is to contribute, in a nutshell, to a future in which we make better decisions about how to live together with artificial intelligence. And
for Professor Bareither, there is no better place to do his research than Tübingen. For example, there is a so-called Cyber Valley, Europe's largest research consortium in the field of artificial intelligence. The institute where Professor Bareither works is called the Ludwig-Uhland-Institute.
Well, our institute is special in several ways. It has a very difficult history that's connected to National Socialism, but it was also, since the 1960s, a very extremely progressive institute. It participated in the building up of cultural anthropology in Germany and played quite a significant role. So it has a very interesting and complex history, and it's a small department now with 3 professorships, but a really good one, I think, and we have different areas of expertise. And what makes this institute special is that we all share a lot of responsibilities, but also research interests. And we have several projects where we collaborate, where we closely work together. And this is the same for teaching, that we really try and work together to create interesting teaching programs for our students. And then also the place, of course. We are on the castle in Tübingen, so everyone is welcome to visit us someday. If you go into the castle and you walk up the stairs, then you see like a little house. And it really looks like out of a Grimm's fairy tale, you know. But if you go in, it's actually not a house, it's a tower. And it goes down into the castle with our own library and interesting furniture, which has to do with its history. But come and see for yourself.
This was Key to My Research, a podcast produced by Changing Time in cooperation with the University of Tübingen. For more information and the links to the sources, see the show notes below. There, you can also find a link to the whole interview with Professor Bareither. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review and recommend it to your friends and family. Authors Chris Veit, Jotti Fotiadis. Special thanks to Professor Christoph Bareither, Heiko Heil, Oliver Häusler, Kurt Schneider and Oliver Lichtwald. My name is Jennifer, thanks for listening and see you next time.